thank you for coming today. Wonderful packed house, 30 years. Who would have thunk it? 1989 to now. I'm very proud of my team. They're here. And I usually tell Sarah, my associate director, that everything goes right with the projects we do. I'll happily take credit. If it goes wrong, it's your fault. Hey, we're preparing them for real life, right? So, welcome to the annual forecast. I told Bill this year I didn't want a speaking role. Guess what? I have a speaking role. Our keynote speaker is missing in action, so I'm going to be talking to you about the national economy quickly. I come from a background of scouts and Army, and we believe in being prepared. So this morning at 6:30, I came to the office. I said, just in case, let me put together a presentation. Thank goodness. So if we could have that. This is from something you can access anytime you want if you're a subscriber to the Wall Street Journal. Every month, the Wall Street Journal surveys 60 top economists around the country. And they ask them the same 10 questions to see trends, economic forecasting trends in the country. And they are the basic things. Where's my clicker here? Okay. Basically, if you can see the trend there, the thick bars are what the historical data is, and then the predictions are the thinner ones. And in the predictions, there's a fairly long-term stabilization of the GDP. But if you look at the upper end of the forecast of the 60 people, this past year, 2019, for the first time, more than 50% of the respondents are predicting problems ahead. And remember, two consecutive quarters of reduction is considered a recession. We're going to come to the recession discussion at the end of the presentation, but that has changed again this year. Their pessimism has increased. Inflation is continuing to be under 2%, although if you look at their projections, they are predicting at 2%. And there's a lot of worry about a low inflation. I never thought I'd live the day when people would be worried about a low inflation, but it is, especially with an aging population. This is an issue. We want the economy to heat up a little bit, especially when we are seeing a little bit of a pessimism in the marketplace. The unemployment story in the United States is a story of three different things. Number one, of course, as you keep hearing in the news, the unemployment rate is actually pretty low. We are considered to be very near full employment. Except what that picture doesn't tell you is that over 16% of U.S. working age individuals are not looking for a job, and they are not employed. They have essentially said, we're going to live on transfer payments, whether they are retirement, unemployment, whatever, and that they're not going to come back into the workforce. If you look at who these people are, you're going to see that about 60% of them are over 50 years of age, primarily male, and primarily in the Midwest and rural areas of the United States. They have checked out of the economy for whatever reason, and they have become, instead of wealth generators, instead of positive contributors to the economy, they are negative impact on our economy. The second story in the unemployment area is the fact that we have not, 80% of the U.S. working population has still not recovered their earning levels from prior to the last recession. So they are, in income terms, they're underwater. That has implications because 68 to 72% of the U.S. economy at any given time is what you and I spend, consumer spending. If they don't have enough to spend, they're not going to go out and buy homes, buy cars, go shopping. So that's, even though right now those who are working are beginning to get some pay increases, it is not catching up with where they used to be. And the resiliency is not there. In other words, if the economy falters, they don't have anything to fall back on. In fact, this past quarter, 3 dangerous indicators popped up. Number one, corporate debt is very high. Number two, personal debt is very high. Number three, families of wealth are borrowing college loans more than they ever did historically. These are all negative indicators, negative leading indicators in a portfolio of indicators that look at the future of the economy. The third story about the unemployment figures is that there is a lot of the population that is not full-time employed. They are considered to be employed, but they're making 2 or 3 part-time jobs make happen. Again, right now it's okay, but if the economy falters, these are issues that worry us about resiliency of the workforce. This is further validation of what we talked about. If you look into the future, these 60 economies are beginning to get more pessimistic than they were. I do not like this. That table doesn't like this. There is no good reason for this to be the case, but there is. And even in our market, they probably can attest to this better. The move is more to multifamily homes, and the new generation, the younger millennials and Gen Z, when they are surveyed, they show a less propensity to buy and own than my generation did and the 2 generations that followed it did. They're perfectly happy renting, and they're perfectly happy in cohabitation type environments. The trend was up, but now it's becoming stable again. And this is, these economists, again, of the 60, about 50% are still not very pessimistic. Just over 50% are pessimistic. So if this is stable, if the pessimists rule, it's going to be a little bit more worrisome. And already in certain markets, not Washington, D.C., but in certain markets, especially again in the Midwest, we're seeing slowdowns. There was a recent report, I think it was last week, that looked at the metro areas. 20 metro areas are very heavily underwater in terms of recovering their housing prices and having high inventories. 20 of the 100 metro areas they looked at. Of the 80 remaining ones, about half of them were either at level or a little over 2% underwater. These are not good statistics, so I am giving you a message that the economy is doing great right now, but the indicators, the leading indicators, are worrisome. Essentially, the piece here is the last bar there. They believe there's going to be a rate increase. And then here's the slide I talked to you about. Look at the majority of these 60 economists believe that the recession is going to be either in 2020, 21, and the next big group is 2020. When you summarize what they say qualitatively, essentially they're saying 18 to 24 months is where it falls together. And this kind of makes sense. There's a professor who recently published a paper, I think she's at Princeton, I'm not sure. She came up with a way of predicting recessions and tested her theory on the past 25 recessions. And all of the past 25, if she had used her tool a few months before the recession, she would have predicted. Most recessions, as you know, are declared after the fact. We might even be in one that we don't know yet. The National Bureau of Economic Research announces the recession usually 2 to 3 quarters after it has started. She has this tool that predicted past recessions using historical data, and she believes that the next one is in 12 to 18 months using her model. So it's something to keep in the back of your mind. Since the economy is doing very well, this is the time to bank for a possible slowdown, and this is also the time to be on the lookout for opportunities that are going to come. We are working with one client that is looking at a major capital acquisition and a major building project. And we told them, if you can wait till the recession, if you're not in a rush, you're going to get a much better deal, both in terms of the acquisition cost as well as the construction. The building next door, the Purdue School of Building, Purdue Hall, when it was being built, we were in the middle of a recession, the big recession. And our building came ahead of time, ahead of schedule, and under budget, because the subcontractors were very hungry and very fast with responding to the requests, etc. If you walk into that building, you'll see all kinds of wood paneling and nice technology. A lot of that is because we had come under budget and we were able to do some nice additions to the building. The other thing is the number of small or family or closely held firms in the United States owned by individuals over the age of 65 is a very large chunk of CEOs/owners. They probably will choose to sell or retire in the next slowdown, which means that for people who have cash and patient cash, they'll be able to acquire either competition or up and down the supply chain. So every cloud has a silver lining, I guess. The last thing I wanted to talk about is what's the Fed going to do next? Majority of them believe that what they did is fine, and there's a few very small group, 9%, just about 10%, they want more. And I don't think it's going to happen more. There is a discussion among some economists that what they did in the last 3 rounds was premature, and that if there's a recession, that limits their ability to respond to a recession with added stimulus. And that's it. That's the couple other things I wanted to mention is that manufacturing, especially in the Midwest, is slowing down. There is currently an officially declared freight recession. Freight recessions are important because they indicate consumer buying and what's happening, purchases. So I'll be looking at the next 3 quarters very keenly, because I have a feeling that the National Bureau of Economic Research is going to release some interesting reports. Then, of course, there are the 2 big issues that are currently facing our economy: the trade disputes, plural. So we don't know where those are going. And finally, an election is coming up. Elections are interesting times for economic moves. One, in preparation of the election, whatever party is in power, they will try to do things to goose up the economy. And 2, if there's a change in leadership, there will be, number 1, perceptions of what's going to happen that will impact the economy. Number 2, the actual moves they make that will impact the economy. So bottom line, if I had to summarize everything, is we're doing great right now. I don't think it's going to continue beyond the next couple of years. About that. Historically, we had a lag. We would come in later and we would recover later. This last recession, something interesting happened. We went down at the same time, and we went down hard. Most of it had to do with the real estate, especially in the resort area, and we recovered quite a bit later than the rest of the nation. So the next one, if you look at what's bringing us down, it's consumer spending. And consumer spending traditionally here is lower anyway. So I'm hoping some of that lag is going to come back, but not like it used to be. The lag used to be good 6 months. Now I'm looking at maybe 2-3 months for that lag. Recovery will be equally. We've never had a timely recovery. We've always had a hard time recovering. And there are all kinds of political and economic reasons why our recovery will be delayed at the next recession, yes. This is a good time to take a look at your workforce and invest in top-notch talent. I know it's expensive because those are the people who are going to help you out. Of course, always have healthy cash balances if you can. At the individual level, it gets tricky because what I would recommend, if everybody did it, the recession would come here much faster, which is cash, build cash. Today, if you have a relatively new retirement account, it is not going to grow the way mine did when I was younger. So cash is king, and the problem with cash is that means you're not spending it. When you're not spending it, you're not including that, providing that incentive for the economy, that economic engine is not happening. This is a very interesting question. We were predicting a deep V, quick in and out. But these last three moves by the Fed indicate that it might be a little bit more like a U. What we do not want is that very long bottom U, which is what we had last time. In fact, we had kind of a weird thing. It was a long bottom U that turned into a slow V in the recovery. We don't want that. If we're lucky, it will be a short U. Yeah. But yeah, they're discussing that. The last three moves essentially took away that chance of the deep V. Deep Vs are good. You know, people don't like hearing this, but recessions are good things. They fix the overheated economy, especially if they're deep V short term, that there are needed economic adjustments. There's a reason why they happen. Nobody wants it, but you know, what did Alan Greenspan used to say? Irrational exuberance, it fixes the irrational exuberance. It's multi-pronged. Some of it has to do with the economy itself. We have, on average, a great economy, but it doesn't permeate all sectors of the population. At the highest quintile of the population, we're doing very well, and we're spending and we're buying. But as you go down the other four quintiles, spending is being pulled back. Especially if you get to the bottom quintile, they essentially are existing on transfer payments. So that's a break on consumer spending. Another one is, as you said, is cultural. There is more of a impact of the increasing diversity in the economy, and most recent, what we call new Americans and new Marylanders, they tend to, if they are not professionals, high income professionals, they tend to spend a lot more. They tend to live in larger community, family units, etc. And then finally, this generational, the switch of the younger generation from brick and mortar to more and more online, the more communal living, the more experience rather than things. You remember the yuppies, they would buy the BMWs and the $250 sweaters. That's not this generation. They will spend up to $25 for a coffee drink, but not on the sweater. As we talked about it at the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy document, economic resiliency is key to recovering from recessions. In the 24 jurisdictions of the state of Maryland, Somerset is a dead bottom in terms of its resiliency. In addition, it has a small population, yet certain base services have to be provided anyway, so your overhead tends to be high. Somerset County is going to be hit hard, and it's going to need the help of the state and the nation to recover, and will probably recover later and less than in our area than, say, Wycomico County. Worcester County has this wonderful thing called the in-state foreigners, the tourists that come to the beach. So they have their built-in resiliency. Wycomico, we're the healthcare, we're the education, we're the government center, so we always manage to survive, but Somerset doesn't have any of those. There is the theory of it and there's the practice of it. The theory of it is that that wage increase should have come years ago. We have really done a disservice to ourselves, especially the business community, by fighting incremental increases. Anybody who's lived in this country, in this county, in Wycomico the past 30 years knows that sudden increases in anything is not a good thing. This is why we have the revenue cap, that suddenly 24% increase in property taxes. This is the kind of big step increase that the new minimum wage legislation in Maryland is going to put in. I'm glad that they phased it in rather than doing it at one go, but in reality, it should have been done in tiny increments over these past 20 years. Bottom line, in the middle of a recession, you don't want that kind of additional burden on your businesses. So there is a safety valve, there is a mechanism for the governor to delay it, and recession would be an appropriate trigger for that. So we don't know, but yes, that definitely it would be a negative impact. Yeah, I know in this university it's like an $11 million. Christy, do you remember what it was? I can't remember. It's a multiple seven-figure impact for our payroll. Yes. In the U.S. in general, there's a report that the bridge engineers publish monthly, and it has never in the past 20-something years gone above D. It is now in D minus, trending even lower. And there is political gains to be made by promising to do it, but nobody has the wherewithal to be able to do it. The money currently is not in there. There has to be a different funding mechanism, either more tolls or more user fees or something, because there really is no pot of money from which you can take out such a large chunk of money. And not only the hard infrastructure, but also broadband, the 5G. 5G now around Europe, Baltimore, et cetera, is operating. We have a place in Atlanta, and I go there, it's immediately 5G, and you see the difference. Here on the shore, the economic reality is not in place for 5G. So I don't know, we need it. We probably won't get it soon. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy.